They'll try to save us all. Ooh, they'll try to save us all. They'll try to save us all. No good can come from this. They'll try to save us all.
Welcome, everybody, to another edition of the Rockpile Report podcast. I'm your host, Bill, season ticket holder Drew Gear. That's my producer, Chris Kruger. And it is the first week of Bill's training camp. And we're here talking about stock up and stock down. And I feel like it's only appropriate if we start off talking about the fact that on a week when the Bills' health couldn't have been worse, the Rockpile Report podcast's health could not be at a lower point. Chris, how did you injure yourself playing a children's game?
It's not a children's game, but yeah, I had a hockey game last night and I tweaked my knee. Simple play where you skate up the rink and you kind of fake left to widen the gap between a forward and the defenseman, and then you go back to the right, you toe drag, split the D, and then the other defenseman comes over off of the winger that you hope to pass to, and you toe drag him, and then all of a sudden you're in tight to the net, and you have nowhere to go, and I'm already going at a decent amount of speed, and I'm like, boards are right here. I'm just going to turn my back to it, you know, like Mark Steenhouse from the Bandits when he would score, jump into the boards, turn your back. And I turned my back, but my right leg said, I'm not going with you. And I tweaked my knee. I went to the doctor today. I'm going to have to get an MRI. So that's fun. So I might have the Max Hairston injury of LCL. They think it might be, I might have a MCL, LCL strain, tear. Got to have MRI so I can know more about it. But, you know, as standard in healthcare, you need an x-ray first, but it's a ligament. Shouldn't it be an MRI? You need an x-ray. Yeah, those are my bones. This is a tendon. We just need your money. We just need your money.
So the Rockpile Report is on the mend, everybody. And Chris isn't the only one. We've got a packed show for you tonight. Stock up, stock down. Chris, we're going to start, though, with David Edwards' potential for a contract extension. See, I'm not ready to talk about team health just yet. I've got a nice transition lined up in the midpoint of tonight's show for that. Stock up, stock down. David Edwards' potential for a contract extension. Now, here's the thing. Over the first week or so of camp, one of the bigger storylines here has been just how dominant O'Cyrus Torrence has looked. And that's really good news if you're a fan of the Buffalo Bills and you love the continuity and the performance they built on the offensive line last season. You know, they really took a step forward in terms of being dominant, both in terms of running and pass protection. And Chris, did that graphic work or no?
I thought you were talking about his contract extension and not that he sucks at camp, but there you go.
See,
David Edwards, stock down.
See, this is it. His stock's down not because of anything he's done, and that's what makes him unique to start off at the top of the show. O'Cyrus Torrence has had a great run here to start training camp. And the problem is this time of year, everybody's success comes at the detriment of somebody else. That's what training camp is. And so in that way, when everybody's over here applauding, going, man, O'Cyrus Torrence looks great. He's having a dominant camp. There's not a single person, whether it's the ones, whether it's individual drills. O'Cyrus Torrence looks every bit like the draft day steal we thought he was. And now he's looking like he may be one of the more dominant interior offensive linemen we have on the roster. The problem is you've got a guy on the roster named David Edwards, who was brought in as a backup a few years ago. And then played.
Oh, pick six.
Oh, is that a pick six in the Hall of Fame game? Yes. No, come on. They're going to get him. They got him down at the 4-yard line. We are watching the Hall of Fame game because football's back, baby. How can you not put football, even if it is terrible, on the television when it's on? David Edwards was brought in and worked his way into the starting lineup. And he was given a small deal. I believe it was like a 2-year, $4 million a year contract. And last year he was steady. Not, he wasn't a world beater, but he was very steady and reliable for a Bills offensive line that ran the football a ton. And when they did pass protect, needed A gap and B gap protection. And he wasn't a notable liability. There are a lot of football teams out there, Chris, that would love to pay a guy like that. Like, think about all the assets the Dolphins have thrown at the guard position over the last year or two.
Yeah.
You'd like to say to yourself, man, it would be nice if the Buffalo Bills could retain both him and Osiris Torrance. But the problem is Osiris Torrance is looking so good. He's coming up on a contract extension year. And when that happens, if this play continues, you're going to want to get that locked up sooner rather than later. Chris, can you give it a Google? What was the contract that the Trey Smith of the Kansas City Chiefs just signed as a guard? Because gone are the days where interior offensive linemen don't get paid like quality members of the offensive staff. A 4-year, $94 million contract is what Trey Smith just signed in Kansas City.
70 guaranteed.
So when you look at Osiris Torrance, you say there's probably no reason to not give him somewhere in the same ballpark, even if he maybe takes a little bit of a hometown discount. You're talking about probably having to pay Torrance, if his play and health continue, you're going to pay him in the ballpark with inflation, something in the ballpark of about $90 million. And once you do that, can you also guarantee to pay David Edwards what he's worth? So it's not David Edwards' fault. But so far through 1 week of training camp, the idea that David Edwards is going to get a contract extension with the Buffalo Bills has taken a precipitous nosedive. It's, and it's funny because he actually did an interview with Joe Buscaglia from The Athletic where he talked about how the concept of a contract extension almost destroyed his career when he was playing with the Rams. He got so caught up in what's going to happen to me? I just won a Super Bowl with this team. I was playing well enough to be a starter. I need a contract extension. I got to earn it. And then he went out there and had an up and down season and then caught 2 concussions early that ended his season, and he was cut from the team. And so he said afterwards it was devastating to have to put himself back together after all that focus and work. So now this time around, knowing that he's up for a contract extension, he's opened up about the idea that he's going into this year kind of knowing that Osiris Torrance is a freak player at the guard position. He knows that he's behind him in the pecking order, and rather than allowing that to damage his psyche and diminish his performance, David Edwards is taking probably the healthiest approach to this he can and saying, look, I'm going to get paid by somebody even if it's not here in Buffalo. Chris, that almost sounds like James Cook.
Yeah.
Except James Cook's getting all the headlines and David Edwards isn't, even though I'd say they're both just as reliable. Just one of them's far more exciting and impactful than the other one.
Yeah, nobody cares about the offensive line, especially a guard.
So the better Osiris Torrance plays, the less and less likely it becomes that we see David Edwards in a Bills uniform next season. It's something to keep in mind as we watch the rest of training camp and the rest of the preseason process play out. Every player's success comes directly at someone else on the roster's detriment. That's just the nature of sports, man.
And when do we have to give Torrance a new contract? We can do it next season?
I believe we can do it next season. So this is a very important year for Osiris Torrance. And so far throughout the course of this, he's approaching it the way you'd expect somebody in that position to approach things. You know who else's stock is crashing, Chris? Fire up that slide. The backup linebackers. As I reach behind me and grab myself a little whiskey.
There you got Andreessen, Ulofoshio, Balin Spector. They're all not doing too hot out there.
I'm going to go grab myself some Blue Note. And as I pour it, I want to talk about the idea that we know Milano and Bernard are penciled. They're basically not penciled, cemented in as starters as long as they're healthy. And behind them, Dorian Williams is a lock for the roster, given how well he played. He's uncuttable. Just rare athleticism, starting experience. He's got a lot of things going for him. It's a complete mishmash beyond that, though. And Newcomer Shaq Thompson turning heads early in camp is a storyline. Like, if you had a bingo board of things you expected, hearing the name Shaq Thompson in the mouth of every single beat reporter at this point in the process is probably not something you'd have had really high on that list. And that becomes a problem, right? Like, that becomes a real problem if you're a guy like Balin Spector or if you're a guy like Eddie Ulofoshio. This is a quote from Bobby Babich after day 3, and it's something I've been chewing on ever since he said it, and the more and more of these reports that I read coming out of camp. He was asked about the backup rotation and very, very bluntly told everybody in earshot, my backups need to perform and they need to be available. That's the bottom line, and he emphasized the bottom line. So with that in mind, I don't think he meant it this way in the moment, but it's hard not to hear that quote and immediately feel like that's an indictment of Balin Spector's entire career, doesn't it?
Yes.
Like, when you talk about, hey, I need somebody who's available and I need somebody who can get the job done, it's almost like you're pointing the finger at Balin Spector and going, I'm talking to you with your long hair, your long hair and your bad calves. And then, Eddie Ulofoshio, 5th round draft pick. You're not promised a roster spot as a 5th round pick. But to hear guys like Joe Buscaglia and Matt Perino talking about what a great job Shaq Thompson's doing, and the fact that he's moving around the football field not like a guy who just came off an Achilles injury, that probably casts a lot of shade. It kind of dims the hopes of some of these fringe linebackers who were hoping they could sneak on because the competition wasn't going to be that stiff. Now, I don't know, Chris, how many linebackers do you take? Joe Miller in the comments, they could stop drafting great linebackers consequently made of glass. Yes. If they could just stop getting linebackers who get broken, that'd be nice. We'd all appreciate that. But that's not the world we live in. I genuinely believe that, again, you talk about success coming at somebody else's detriment. Balin Spector is in a lot of trouble. If Shaq Thompson continues to get work with the ones and Joe Andreessen continues to roll with the ones, and then in kind of an interesting development, this week, Balin Spector was no longer manning the middle linebacker role, which is the only place he's played at linebacker when he's had to come in and play in real game action. He's been working in with the weak side linebackers. Chris, when you see a guy switching positions in training camp, they say, hey, go work with the other receiving group. That's not great, is it? Mm-mm. It's like if you had a cornerback and you said, you know what? Go work with the safeties for a little while. It means they don't see you as doing that job for very long. I think that Joe Miller, it is odd that he didn't make the same change about his top 3 guys. Yeah. It's I don't know what to say. I mean, this team has built itself around smaller pursuit style linebackers. It's what they are.
Presty also in the comments does not like Balin Spector. Hot garbage.
They're going to continue to play this style of football because they like fast guys who are undersized and can cover well, because they feel like that's the way the league is skewing, and there's few teams. And for anybody who says, oh, well, how are you going to stop the run? I don't know. That first half against Baltimore in the playoffs was pretty impressive for a team with smaller, undersized linebackers and a bunch of 3 technique defensive linemen. It was pretty good. So with that in mind, I just think that Spector and Ulofoshio are already falling behind after a week. You've got these guys here in Shaq Thompson, who has the trust of Sean McDermott. He's got experience coaching him. He brought him in on a flyer, but if they're giving him first team reps, I think that's an indictment of the fact that no one from the back end of the roster has stepped up. And Andreessen, just because of his youth, at worst, is what you wanted out of Balin Spector to begin with over the last few years. A special teams guy who can sometimes come in and play a few snaps for you if you need him. I don't know. I think there's a world, depending on the numbers game at every other position, that both Ulofoshio and Balin Spector are probably in a lot of trouble right now. Is that fair?
I get, yeah, sure.
Another guy whose stock is down is Ryan Vandemark. Now, we don't have a slide for him because he's not worth a slide, but here's what I'll tell you. The battle with Tylen Grable wasn't something I thought we'd see coming into training camp. I thought that given his opportunities last year, I didn't think Ryan Vandermark was half that bad. You know, he played that Chiefs game, and I didn't notice it from the stands and on TV. But the Athletics' Joe Buscaglia pointed out that Vandermark did get a pair of starts in 2024. They came when Tylen Grable was unavailable. And then he took snaps in the season finale at New England at left tackle, which aligns with his historical usage, kind of where the team has placed him over the last couple of years of his career here in the NFL. And when you go back and look, Tylen Grable was actually the swing tackle who was available for the playoffs, not Ryan Vandermark. And I can see why. He can play right tackle. He can also play interior offensive line at either guard spot, and has the requisite size, plays with the requisite power for either interior position. When you go back and look over that, and you think about the versatility there for Tylen Grable, and then you factor that they drafted Chase Lunt, whether or not you think that a late round rookie has a shot at the team, Ryan Vandermark's an undrafted free agent. I don't think they would be giving this much run this early in camp to guys like Tylen Grable. And, you know, with Spencer Brown being out, it's been a pure rotation at that position between the two guys. It's pretty, I shouldn't even say possible. It's probable to me that Grable and Vandermark, only one of them is going to get a shot to make the final 53. Now that you're already splitting reps and Spencer Brown is now activated to start practicing with the team, the next week is probably going to cement who has, who's where in the pecking order of the swing tackle room ahead of the preseason. And it feels crazy to say that the preseason is just, a week away?
Something like that.
We're a week away from Kids Day, where the Buffalo Bills are going to open their preseason slate. That's nuts. Where the hell did the summer go? It's crazy. Now, we opened the show talking about how Chris injured himself playing a game that usually people grow out of by the age of 13. Chris with his LCL injury. I will say this, whether you're talking, when you're talking about team health, I haven't seen a collapse like this since Enron back in 2001. The Bills have cratered from a team health perspective. This is a tweet from Sal Capaccio earlier this week, and I'm going to try to get through it in one breath. Here are the Bills who will not practice today: Dorian Williams, Tyrell Shaver, Cedric Van Pran Granger, Curtis Samuel, Terrell Bernard, Elijah Moore, Dalton Kincaid, Dawson Knox, Tyler Bass, Caden Prather, Spencer Brown, Laviska Shenault. And then, we find, okay, hang on.
Shenault was a given. We knew that.
I need to sip there. You factor in Alec Anderson just got his knee scoped. They say his week one availability isn't completely in doubt, but I don't know. You'd have to ask Dr. Kyle Trimble over at Banged Up Bills about that one. It is funny to me that this team has been keeping the guys over at Banged Up Bills busier than normal at this time in the year. And I saw a tweet from Kyle Trimble earlier today when he was talking about injuries, because I heard someone say, this is the worst that the team has ever had it in training camp. So Kyle did the work. And he went back in time and he looked at it and said that he looked at injury numbers throughout 2 weeks compared to last year. In 2024, 18 different players had some type of injury or ailment that required the athletic trainer's involvement. Today, with two practices to go to catch up to where we were at that point this year, we're up to 21. So there's a slight uptick, but really not that many. I think, and would you agree with me, Chris? What happens is that it's the names that draw more attention rather than the total number of them or the overall severity of them.
For me, it's the what the injury is. Is it just like veteran rest, just general soreness? You're working back into getting into game shape. I'm more worried about, are we day to day or are we week to week? In that sense. So, speaking with week to week, obviously the hot topic in terms of injury,
Stock down is Maxwell Hairston. And let's just talk about it. Now, last week, I opened up with what I said was probably hot takey, but it turns out it isn't, and that Max Hairston wouldn't be the week 1 starter unless he highlighted that he was capable of being truly special in coverage. I said that in full confidence. I meant it. And I said he'd have to be really, really special in coverage to have the team overlook his run game deficiencies in order to put him out there as an every down boundary corner. And as you could guess, throughout the early going of training camp, he has ceded a lot to the veteran Tre White, simply because the team has watched him play run defense before and thinks, hey, he can do it. And also, in terms of coverage, he's more consistent. His highs might not be as high, but his lows definitely aren't as low. And that's what training camp is all about, managing that dynamic. So maybe this injury is my fault. Maybe it's my fault that I decided to get a fistful of whiskey and just say at the top of my lungs, you know what's going to happen? Max Hairston isn't going to start week 1. Instead of boring you all with my take about who's on the depth chart, how we move forward, what other guys look like in training camp, instead what I want to open your eyes to is the dynamic that if you take a step back, the Buffalo Bills are not the only ones dealing with this. And also, if you were trying to, if you were hinging your hopes, hitching your wagon to the success of a rookie player in any way, shape, or form, you're probably it's not going to go well for you.
You hit your wagon and then you circle the wagons.
Chris, think about the drought. How many years during the Buffalo Bills drought did we all sit here and go, oh man, if our first, second, and third round pick, Doug Whaley with his famous, hey, off the bus starters. We think we drafted 3 off the bus starters between the first, second, and third round. Chris, do you remember who that was?
Adolphus Washington, Reggie Ragland, and I can't remember the other one.
Call in, guys, in the comments. Who did we draft in the first round? This is what I'll say. If your team is at a place where you have to look at a rookie draft class and go, all right, that first round pick is going to be the reason that insert position group name here is great or is successful for us this year, that's a losing proposition. Out of the gate, you're probably already behind the sticks and you don't know it. I took a look, Chris, Pro Bowls. Now, I know Pro Bowls is a terrible way to measure things, but it was funny. Do you know how many rookies make Pro Bowls? Like, they're so good that they're notably better than the rest of the people who play their position.
Are you talking about...
Shaq Lawson was the first round pick that year.
Oh, God. I was going to say...
Appreciate it, Gridiron.
I don't want to say first ballot, but because it goes... Pro Bowl goes down so far, you get named to the Pro Bowl, and then you just go down the ladder because everyone rejects it.
Yep.
So I'm saying the first initial. Are you saying the first initial Pro Bowl release
voted in?
I'm going to say 1.
Brock Bowers was the only offensive rookie to make the 2025 Pro Bowl roster outright. Malik Neighbors was an amazing player. He was an alternate for Amon-Ra St. Brown. BTJ was an alternate for Zay Flowers. Bijan Robinson was an alternate over in the NFC only because Saquon Barkley went to the Super Bowl. There was 0 defensive rookies selected to the Pro Bowl based on voting over the last 2 seasons. Sauce Gardner did it. There's only been a handful. And I know that I'm not trying to downplay the importance of the player or the impact of rookies at positions like cornerback or defensive line to a team's success. But again, they shouldn't be your plan. You should be, if you're a Super Bowl contender, your plan should not be, oh my God, I need this rookie to pan out or my season is doomed. So everybody say it with me. Goose Fraba. In fact, with his injury, we got the best news we possibly could. And we're not the only ones around the NFL dealing with this. I want you guys to open your eyes and just take a look outside of the Buffalo Bills for a minute with me. Let's go just a couple teams real quick. Look at the Browns. Cornerback Martin Emerson, who's definitely going to start games for him, gets carted off with an Achilles injury last week. He started 15 games last season. The Ravens, Isaiah Likely, gets carted off with an ankle injury. He's missing a few weeks. The most dynamic tight end remaining on an offense that primarily runs through them is going to be missing him for the early part of the preseason. And even if he's available, he won't have a lot of time in the preseason with his team before they play Buffalo in week 1. That's a huge blow to them. Look at the Cowboys. Left tackle Tyler Guyton carted off with a lower leg injury, 4 to 6 weeks. Second-year cornerback Kalen Carter carted off with a hyperextended knee injury, out 4 to 6 weeks. This is starting to sound like Shorzy. Like, oh, but Lord Jesus, I never seen a team as banged up as this. And they go, oh, you're 4 to 6 weeks all day, old man. That kid was a starter last year before, he got put on IR after 5 or 6 games. Cornerback Trayvon Diggs, but shocking, guys, there's a member of the Diggs football family who has a crappy attitude when it comes to his football team and doing what he's told. Behind schedule in his knee rehab. He got fined by the team, and nobody knows when he's going to be ready. And then rookie cornerback Siobhan Revelle, somebody that the Bills fans were like, hey, given our depth chart makeup, maybe we could sign a veteran and get away with drafting Siobhan Revelle. He was always going to be slow working his way back from an ACL tear. He's not available yet. Not in a capacity to start. The Cowboys are getting wrecked with meaningful injuries to meaningful players. The Dolphins, a team in our own backyard. Artie Burns tore his ACL on the very first day of practice. The veteran cornerback Kader Kohu, the guy who was their backup plan, he's out for the season with a knee injury now. Ashton Davis, they were like, okay, our safety chart got thinned out, but it's okay because we've got a veteran from the Jets who can act as a stopgap and maybe one of our young guys comes around. He's in a walking boot. He's in a walking boot. They don't know when he'll be back. The Jets quarterback Justin Fields gets carted off with a toe dislocation in the very first day of practice.
You got to use a cart for that.
Chiefs wide receivers are dropping like flies. Hollywood Brown. It's been 3 years since Hollywood Brown played a full slate of games, and he said that his number one objective this offseason was to stay healthy. That didn't get him very far. Carted off the field with an ankle injury early in camp. Xavier Worthy, he got a head injury the other day. Left practice for an evaluation. I don't know what his status is because I'm not going to bother checking up on the Chiefs. Sky Moore injured his hamstring. It feels like the Bills' injury list is long, but the injuries are relatively mild. And this is a team that, knowing what's at stake this season, is being maybe overly cautious. But I would rather have that than the alternative. And if the Max Hairston thing is the worst thing we've heard this week, if you look around the NFL, it's really not that bad by comparison. There are other teams getting far worse news than we are. You have to be able to get your hands and your heads around that, though. And just relax. Understand that teams are being overly cautious this time of year. And we should all instead just be thankful that Max Hairston's knee injury wasn't worse. I mean, when they had reports that the DBs held a prayer circle for him in the middle of practice that day when they went off to do individual drills, I bet you every single one of those cornerbacks who saw him get hurt like that, think about what was going through their heads. They're like, oh, shit, that kid looked good. Now where is he? Non-contact?
Yeah.
It's never good. I think we got the best of a bad situation, don't you?
Yes.
So, well, his stock is down. His stock is not the lowest, even knowing that he's going to miss weeks of practice. No. There's those among us who are even somehow lower than the recently interested Max Hairston. And that is people who think they have sources. Chris, hit him with the slide. We are the Pettiest Bills podcast, and I don't dislike anybody who joins us in our hobbyist pursuits over here and the things that we do. But it has been a bad week for the hashtag sources crowd. Okay? Hashtag sources is getting a rough ride over the last few weeks. Some of you will get that reference, and if you don't, linger longer. Stick around. You'll learn to appreciate it. Over the past couple weeks, a group of hobbyists, semi-professionals here in content creation have tried their hand at playing Adam Schefter and Ian Rappaport. They do it for us. They do it for the consumers of Bills content. And it went a lot like that first sales pitch from the movie Tommy Boy. Chris, if you could give us the audio of that.
I can't stop! cliff. Ah! And your family screaming, "Oh my God, we're burning alive! No, I can't feel my legs! In comes a meat wagon! Woo, woo, woo. And the medic gets out and says, "Oh my God."
Now, I want to preface everything I'm about to say as I let me take a sip here. I like Zach Sheldon. I have no beef with the guys over at Trainwreck Sports. I don't dislike any of them. In fact, I don't dislike, well, I shouldn't say that. There are people I dislike. I'm one of the most spiteful people on earth, and we are the Pettiest Bills podcast. But I like the Trainwreck Sports guys. I was just joking around with them over at Mafia Con, catching up with them, seeing how things are going, telling us, their boy Slick there, that he should embrace his 20s because it's all downhill as soon as it's the big 3-0. I've had beers with Mike Bunt from their Pay the Bills podcast, and he's not a bad guy. They're breaking news on the Bills red helmets not coming back, being like 24 hours before the team announces them. Chris, that's just sad. That's rough.
Yeah.
That stings a little bit. And then there's a content outlet who shall not be named. Oh, wait a minute. There's a screenshot. Chris, if you want to go ahead. In a now deleted tweet, there's an outlet who decided to try their hand utilizing what they thought was a trusted source of information inside the Buffalo Bills organization to boost themselves to online engagement and notoriety. And it went about as well as Chris attempting to get fancy playing a child's game last night on rollerblades. Now, you're all aware of it, and there's been a lot of people punching down and making fun of and, quote unquote, talking smack about these individuals in the aftermath of this. And it's hard, right? It's hard from where I sit because it is easy to laugh when people trip and fall. I mean, if you go back throughout this is something I was thinking about the other day. Movies. Think about what movies used to be back in even the silent film era. You go back to like the 1800s, 1900s. People would fall down ladders and get things dropped on their heads, and everyone would laugh and applaud. And we're talking about a time in human history.
That happened this week in Buffalo with bricks falling off buildings.
Yeah.
And hitting people in the head.
And you're talking about these films existing in a time when if that happened to you, there was no good medical care readily available to everybody. You probably died. If you fell down a flight of stairs in real life the way early slapstick comedy or like even the Three Stooges did, you probably ended up with like a permanent limp or intraction or God knows like sepsis and you died. It was bad. And yet we are drawn to human suffering and just it's always fun to see people get pilloried. I just look at it like this, guys. Okay. Do you know what this is in my hand? This is the AP style book that I was given in my freshman semester of journalism school. Okay. The Media Writer's Handbook. That's what my copy was called, by George T. Arnold. They gave this to us, and then they taught us how to be journalists. Okay. The AP style book teaches you a lot of things about the right words to use, about language to be used, words you should use in conjunction instead of other interrogative pronouns, verbs and verbiage that should be utilized. Now, Chris, do you know the difference between a verb and an adverb?
No.
Of course you don't. Like, I'm looking at one here. This chapter 27 is just entitled Sensitivity in Language. And it tells you what kind of phrasing you'd like to avoid depending on what the content of your piece is. You literally go to journalism school to learn the science of how to write. And in that way, journalistic theory matters. Now, we as sports fans and content creators and content consumers, there's been this move over the course of the last 10, 15 years where people go, hey, non-traditional sources of journalism and non-traditional journalists who create content have a space. And that's completely correct. But let's not kid ourselves that those people who approach this from a non-traditional place understand a goddamn thing. Sorry. That was aggressive. Understand a damn thing about the process of journalism. Anybody can write 500 words. What's made the best journalists of our time stand out is their ability to say the right thing in the right way at the right time. That's what, look, it's special. It's innate. It's why the best journalists have jobs for decades. They become household names in a time before Twitter and social media and shortened attention spans. And like that was my passion. My passion growing up and going into college was investigative reporting. I loved the idea of having sources and getting information and finding out things that nobody else knew. I went to college and legitimately thought that when I graduated, I'd be throwing myself into a career, a lifetime career of sources and scoops and breaking news. I even got the rare opportunity to touch and taste and feel the real thing. I got to do something journalistically that changed things for other people. And that's what having sources and like that's where that comes from. Is the desire to expose, to educate, and to change the world just a little bit. And through the process of learning the science of journalism, you learn that sources, quote unquote, require judgment to go along with it. You have to learn how to exercise that, and that's a developed muscle. You're not just born with it. There's certain sources that you know to quote. Then there's other sources. You simply let them shape your research. They give your existing work direction. They give it color. They give it flavor. They give you other ideas that you haven't already thought of. I don't know how we as a society ended up in the place where we are, where now it's just a race to be first. And when you do, there's a lot of people who do not, like in a race to be first, there's some guys like Schefter and Rappaport. I'm not going to act like they're not sort of propped up now by an entire conglomerate of agents and football teams and people who want them to kind of quietly be mouthpieces on their behalf. I'm not going to pretend that. But there's a lot of other really good journalists who do a lot of really good work, and they get scoops because they've made the right connections and they've written pieces and they've built a platform around the fact that not every source they get gets quoted. But it maybe gave them some direction. Chris, the other day, you texted me with a source who gave you information about something potentially big that's happening inside of the Bills Stadium construction project. Do you know what I've said about it here on this podcast or publicly on social media or even to friends and family?
Zero, because we haven't done a show about it yet.
But not only that, I don't know if that's legitimate or not. So I'm going to sit on it, but I'm going to start doing more research. I'm going to start maybe reaching out to some people I know in ancillary things that are also associated with this to try to corroborate it before I talk about it, because I learned journalistic integrity. The problem is when you've decided that you want to go from the world of people who do this on an amateur basis to the ones who want to try to be first because it brings eyeballs and clicks and engagement and it gets you out there, which I don't even know what that's worth. What is the value of being first on Bill's Twitter, Chris? How many shekels is that worth to you?
No.
Is it worth your self-respect?
I don't know. Tank Ninja wants to know if it's the location of Jimmy Hoffa.
It would be hilarious if Jimmy Hoffa's body is actually being buried right now inside of the foundation of One Bills Drive. They'd never look for it there, or Two Bills Drive, as it's going to be called. I want to talk about this because I think it's relevant. John Warrow, he's not exactly every Bills fan or every Buffalo sports content consumer's best friend, but I got to have an experience with him at Bills camp in 2017. 2017, I had credentials. I was under the tent and we're getting ready. Leslie Frazier's there as the defensive coordinator doing the morning's press conference. And John Warrow raises his hand first. He gets called on. He asks one question. Frazier answers it. He writes something in his notepad and goes, "All right, thanks, guys." And he gets up and in the middle of a conference that's being live streamed, he just walks out. And he doesn't even walk out behind everyone. He walks in front of the podium, making it very clear to everyone John Warrow has left the building. And everybody kind of like murmured. You heard some of the other beat guys talking like, "Oh, who do you think he is?" So then I run into him at the Pittsford pub later that day. He and I had about a half dozen beers together. And he told me that He's like, oh, Leslie wasn't going to say anything. I asked one question so I could write my mandatory 500-word blurb for the AP wire. And then he used the rest of the day to go get FaceTime with the newly anointed GM of the Buffalo Sabres, Jason Botterill, who just happened to be there at camp that day. And he also made sure to spend a lot of time with Jason Botterill's handlers so that in the future, if and when he needed a scoop or he needed some inside information, he'd already started building the relationships it would take to support that. That is professional journalism. That is how this gets done. That's a guy who understands like how this is supposed to work. And like, I don't know, there's a professionalism to being first. And I can say this pretty flatly. Most of us in the content creation community, myself included, we don't have it. So find a lane. That's it. That's all I ask. Find your lane and stick to it. Have fun. Enjoy yourselves. This is all for laughs. Nobody's getting rich off Bill's Twitter or Bill's podcasting. I don't care what they tell you. Find your crowd. Find a group of people who show up for your live streams, show up for your recordings, who show up to your tailgates when you do things out in public, and enjoy this thing that we're all out here doing together. And if you have ambitions above and beyond that, then quit being lazy and go learn the science. Pick up an AP style book and educate yourselves. Otherwise, knock it off. It's insulting to anybody who's ever tried it. Okay? That's...
Breathe, sip some whiskey.
Goose
Fraba.
All right. I am going to get off my bully pulpit here. And instead, it can't all be negative, right, guys? It can't be a podcast where all we do is rail. I want to talk about whose stock is up. And that's Tre White. Tre White. Guys, look, when I talked about how it was going to be hot takey, that Hairston was probably going to have to be like special to be a week one starter, injury notwithstanding, I was right. Per Cover One's Anthony Prohaska, who was there at camp, he talked about the cornerback rotation over the course of the first week and said that even before the knee injury, it was a 55-45 split of first team reps in the first day. And then slowly that turned into a 60-40 split. That then by like the fourth or fifth practice, 70-30 in terms of Tre White playing with the starters and Max Hairston playing with the second team. And every pundit out there is telling you how good Tre's footwork looks, how great, how he's sticky in coverage, all this stuff. Let's all take a deep breath and take a step back. I don't want anyone to go. It's just been a few days in padded practices. Okay, let's not get ahead of ourselves and go, oh, old Tre White's back. He's going to be all pro Tre. No. Before anybody's calling him starting caliber out of the gate, he did get burned by a guy off the street. Steven Gosnell got his touchdown against Tre White.
Yeah.
So I want to preface this by saying, let's all take a deep breath. I don't want to wear out the goose for us. I'm not going to hit you with it again, but we could put one in here now. For me, what's most impressive about Tre White is just the confidence and the swagger seems to be back for him. And I think that's a big deal. And I think it's an underrated part of the story that is Tre White. You got to remember, this is a guy, like, look at the nightmare run that this guy has been on. 2021 on Thanksgiving, he tears his ACL. 2023, Achilles tear early in the 2023 season. 2024, he gets released by the Buffalo Bills because of cap consideration. Signed by the Rams. He got benched by October, was traded to Baltimore in November, kind of worked in the dime package, so he wasn't seeing starter snaps. And then they lose. Chris, almost prophetically, Tre White comes all the way back to Buffalo as a visiting player and loses a playoff game. I don't know that there's a player that's had a worse 3-year run over the span of that than Tre White. Like, you're going to have to work hard to find a guy who's been more snake bit than Tre White in those moments. And what I love about this is that to get the sound bites from Tre White, he's confident, borderline cocky. You know, he talks about how he's worked this is a quote, "I've worked my ass off to get back on this field. And he basically said, I'm not rolling over for anybody." His attitude is that he came out here to compete and to win a job. You know, in the offseason, people go, "Oh, it would be great to have Tre White as a mentor for these young kids." Chris, the Baltimore Ravens thought the same thing about having Joe Flacco around when it came to Lamar Jackson, and we know how that went. We watched him let Lamar Jackson just die on an island in the middle of that playoff game. He was like, "I'm not here to teach you things. I'm here to compete because I think I'm good enough to be playing."
Tank Ninja said it could possibly go worse than all those years trotting out the ghost of Josh Norman.
Yeah, Josh Norman. Josh Norman getting thrown by Derrick Henry on national TV like that, probably the most disrespectful stiff arm that I can remember. Like that guy has a family. His kids are going to see that someday. Josh Norman is going to go yell at his son, hey, I told you to take out the garbage. And his kid's going to look at him and go, "Hey, don't make me call Derrick Henry."
Dude,
"Hey, do I have to call Derrick Henry, Dad? You better pipe down."
Dude, look at Jared Allen on TV. He looks like
Jared Allen's hair rules.
He looks like he sells ATVs.
That is a gorilla cape if I've ever seen one. I love that hairstyle. I like that Jared Allen is still rocking just the gorilla cape. The what do they call it? The Mississippi waterfall.
I guess
it's awesome.
It's mullet-esque.
It's awesome. But what I love about the Tre White resurgence isn't what he's doing on the field. It's where his head is. Because this is a guy in 2021 who flat out said that he considered retirement with how hard his rehab was. This is a guy who'd experienced some of the highest highs, you know, being named an All-Pro. He's great at everything he does. And then he gets injured and has to undergo this grueling rehab. And he said there's times he considered not being an NFL football player anymore. So to know that guy could go from a place where he almost considered not loving the game enough to go do it anymore, which is something Steve Tasker talks about all the time on One Bills Live. He goes, you know, there comes a day where you as a player, whether it's age, whether it's injury, whatever it is, that you get out there for a camp and you go, I just don't love this anymore. Like, it's not worth it for me to get up for what this is going to take to be a part of an NFL football team for a full season. So knowing that he struggled with the mentality of that, the fact that he's come full circle like the prodigal son, and he's back now with this fire and this just brimming with confidence, I think that that's the most underrated part of his story arc so far. It's not what he's doing on the field. It's what he's got going on up here. And realistically, for a cornerback, that might be one of the biggest things. It's just the mental aspect of the game. Can you go game to game, rep to rep? Like, I want that Tre White. The Tre White who's confident and can lose a rep and go, nah, it doesn't matter. I'm Tre White. I can get that guy. I think Tre White needed to have this rough road of his to get to where he is now mentally. I couldn't be happier that he's having this resurgence right now, Chris. I love it. I'm looking here. He brought the matter-of-fact F-bomb express. I love it. Guys, I didn't hear no bell from Tank Ninja. That's right. That's right. I also want to talk about the resurgence of the defensive line. Okay, the defensive line has seen an uptick, and that's to be expected with pads coming on. You know, if you think about the defensive line and you think about what that means for the football team, like, I don't know. You hear a lot about football, and it's hard to get a feel for the trenches because physicality is kind of at a minimum. You can only do so many things when there's no pads on. I do think it's interesting that for as much press, like I remember I was listening to WGR the one morning driving to work, and I heard Jeremy White talking about how the offensive line came out really cocky about, okay, you know, we were basically yelling at defensive linemen saying, okay, pads are on now. Now it's a level playing field, blah, blah, blah. We're going to learn to play with physicality. You know, now we're even in terms of who can play what way. And I think it's interesting that we're still hearing that the defensive line is popping. And I think that it's a good thing that we're getting more Greg Rousseau playing against right tackles. Because I think that if you want to unlock what Greg Rousseau is as a pass rusher, his ceiling was never going to be that high. It's why he fell to the Bills the way that he did in that draft. You know, Chris, if you remember the defensive ends drafted ahead of him.
Yeah.
There was the guy the Saints took. There was, who was the Dolphins pick that year? The one who just tore his...
Jalen Phillips?
Jalen Phillips went like 15.
Was it Kwity Paye?
Kwity Paye. Wasn't
he one of them?
He went to the Colts. And then there was Greg Rousseau. And then immediately after Greg Rousseau, Odafe Away, Justin Schreienka, they went to the Baltimore Ravens and the Buccaneers, respectively. And out of the gate, everyone was saying, oh, Away looks great. And Tryon looks good. He's got sacks as a rookie. Rousseau stinks. It's the... Who's having the better career?
Rousseau.
Greg Rousseau by a country mile. And so with that said, he's been having to go against left tackles in terms of pass rush because they've always had a better pass rusher on the roster. Well, now you're entering a world where they have a Joey Bosa, but they, by all accounts, even in training camp, they understand the Joey Bosa plan. It's pitch count. Pitch count, pitch count, pitch count. And I think Bobby Babich even admitted that there's times he wants to run or he wants to see Joey Bosa out there for a rep, and the training staff is like, nah, nope, he's off limits. Can't have him. Send somebody else. So Michael Hoyt runs out there. Or the fact that they're allowing Greg Rousseau to play more against right tackles, I think is how you unlock the best of Greg Rousseau that we've ever seen. He's now tenured, he's experienced, he's developed his technique, his anchor. And at the same time, he's going to give you more in pass rush opportunities against that caliber of player than against most NFL left tackles.
Andrew Barber from earlier in the show. Have you guys heard that they are training with a 5-man front for the defense this year? Question mark. Is that a thing?
I have not heard anything about a 5-man front. Now, I could go, I've got a source inside the building that says that they're trying the 5-man front, but I'm not going to do that. Instead, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take that, I'm going to write it down, and then I'm going to go ask some people that I trust who have eyes on the team, and I'm just going to ask them what they think. And then depending on what they say, I'll allow that to shape the way I talk about the progression of the defensive front, because that's what this is all about.
Will you ask Reed?
I don't even know if Reed could find the defensive line during practice.
He doesn't. I've asked him stuff about the team before, like when he lived with me, and he's like, I have no idea. I'm constantly snapping to Colton and Hauschka. I have no idea what's going on with the defense. I have no idea of our defensive game plan. I'm too busy with my special team stuff.
What is interesting is that the move has been made. It seems very official in terms of what defensive lineman is slotting in where. Because at defensive tackle, the rotation at 3-tech has pretty much been Larry Ogunjobi, Ed Oliver, and TJ Sanders. Dwayne Carter, whether you like it or not, whether I like it or not, he seems destined to be a 1-tech tackle for the Buffalo Bills. I don't know what his upshot is in that kind of role. I hearken back to the time that, Brandon, maybe I've mentioned this before, but Brandon Beane went out, and when he was the Carolina Panthers assistant GM, they prioritized a guy in the draft. Was it Vernon Butler? Chris, Vernon Butler. Give it a Google. Where'd he go to college? It wasn't a big school, but they drafted him highly because they thought he could become what Star Lotulelei was for them in his prime. Yeah, Vernon Butler. There he is. Where'd he go to college? Louisiana Lafayette?
La Tech.
Okay, La Tech. So they took him and then brought him to the Buffalo Bills and tried to, but they were saying, they're like, he's huge, but he can be a 3-tech, he could be a 1-tech, he could do all kinds of stuff for us. And almost immediately Vernon Butler got here and became relegated to 1-tech duties, which he stunk at. He was mediocre at best at this thing because realistically he had 3-tech like abilities, but lacked the anchor that's required, even though he was massive. You know, it's like when I talk about my friend Doug Roloski, we used to joke Doug's big for no reason. Because Doug's one of the biggest guys I know. He played lineman. He played offensive line in high school football. He's played hockey. He was always like an aggressive checker. But then if you're out at the bar with him, he's the most peaceful guy in the entire world. He may look intimidating. Doug's not fighting anybody in public. Doug's a lover, not a fighter. And we used to joke, Doug, you're big for no reason. Vernon Butler was big for no reason. Now what they're trying to do is take Dwayne Carter, who they drafted to be a 3-tech, and move him to 1-tech simply because they're like, well, he's big enough. No. You just found a guy who's big for no reason. He's not going to fit that role. I don't love that. But outside of that, I do love what I'm seeing from everybody else. You know, Zion Logue's getting some talk. I like the fact that TJ Sanders has started to make some plays, show some penetration skills, not just because of his physicality, but because of his... I think the reason that the Bills prioritized TJ Sanders was because of the fact that he had some polished moves as a pass rusher. And when you think about the importance of that, as an interior offensive lineman, there's only so much you can do. You're not an edge rusher where you can spin. I mean, I guess you can spin, but if you spin as an interior defensive lineman, you're just spinning potentially directly into another guy. You need a swim move, a rip move. You need a club. You need an arm over. You need a couple moves, and you have to have them really, really soundly down as an interior pass rusher. TJ Sanders had a little bit more of that than a lot of the other guys who were at his position and were available. It's why even though everyone wanted a 1-tech or even the other pass rushing defensive tackles available at that pick, Sanders was the pick because they felt like he had the most developed repertoire in that one specific area. And it's starting to show. Every day he's made a couple plays where people in attendance, even if it doesn't make the national, even doesn't make the beat reporters, 5 things I saw at camp today. I've texted and gotten responses from my sources that he's making more plays day by day, which is what you want to see out of a 2nd-round draft pick. I like hearing that. Now, Chris, are you concerned at all that we haven't heard about Landon Jackson?
No.
No? Not even a little. Good. No, good. That's a good thing. The fact that you're not overreacting to a lack of press about Landon Jackson, because I'll tell you what, Landon Jackson's job was always going to be do the things that A.J. Epinesa did. And it took A.J. Epinesa a while to figure out what A.J. Epinesa does. I'm not worried about this. It's a long preseason process still. We're only 1 week into camp. I think they're doing all the things correctly. No, best move ever, Von Miller in his prime. Yeah, Von Miller in his prime, Jimmy Key. The problem is it moved Greg Rousseau from a place of strength to a weakness of his. And he goes, I thought I heard Landon Jackson was injured. Good. I hope that's the reason I'm not hearing from him. Oh, Chris is giving me the lip sealed thing. He's throwing the key away.
Well, yeah, because I was going to say something, and I mean, I'll tell you off air, but
I was going to make a joke. What did the sun get him? But that's also in poor taste.
Yes.
That's also in poor taste. Again, we're amateurs. If I was a professional journalist, saying something like that would get me in a lot of trouble. At the end of the day, guys, the defensive line it's trending upwards. It's hard to not like what they've done there. I like that they have a plan for everybody involved. They know what they want out of Dwayne Carter from day one. He's not being, my fear was that he was going to get caught in between 2 roles. Like stuck as a 3-tech and then maybe as a 1-tech. And then if that didn't work, we'd shift him back over. He'll never learn anything. Instead, from day one, he's a 1-tech. Greg Rousseau going off right tackle. Okay. We know what we want from Greg and we will figure out what happens on this other side. We'll figure it out. I like that. They've set their expectations and they're acting upon it. Steve Noble also points out it's got to be difficult for the D-line to shine consistently against a quality offensive line. The last person whose stock is up, Chris. I know you're giving me the roundup. Let's wrap it up.
We got to go.
Give me the last slide.
I don't have a slide. I'm out of slides.
Josh Allen, guys. And if only because, the cameras are there and HBO and the rest of the country is going to be there to see it, Josh Allen has really put on what it is, not just to be a Buffalo Bill, but what it is to be a part of the community and the fan base here in Buffalo. The fact that multiple times they've had to pull Josh Allen away from the autograph line. The fact that Josh understands that, hey, when that horn blows and it's time to stop glad handing and signing autographs and kissing babies and shaking hands, that doesn't apply to me. I'm Josh fucking Allen. I could do whatever I want. Security literally came out to get Josh, and they couldn't. They couldn't wrangle him in. He just shrugged him off and went about his business. I'll do what I want. That kid wants a hug. There was a girl who was there. It was her first training camp. She was literally next in the autograph line. And Josh turned his back and finally decided, okay, I've had enough. I got to go. And she broke down in tears, and Josh happened to see it out of the corner of his eye, and he ran back over, gave her a hug, told her, like, hey, it's okay. Here, I'll sign you. That's a guy who gets it. How important he is to this fan base and how important he is to this community. And just what the role of MVP quarterback and what it means to set the tone in the locker room for everybody else. It's like, look, Josh Allen, they make no bones about on the field, he's one of the biggest smack talkers, and he's aggressive about it. He's aggressive with some of his own teammates sometimes in those mic'd up segments. He also loves to death the fact that he gets to be a professional quarterback, and it's not lost on him that he is there to prop up the fans and the fan base and the people who show up and who put money in the Bills' coffers to see this thing get played that allow him to be a half billionaire. I love that. I love that a year removed from getting, basically securing multi-generational wealth and being anointed league MVP, he hasn't developed an ego. In fact, just the opposite. He's become more a man of the people. That's Josh Allen, and that's our Buffalo Bills. That's what it means to be a Buffalo Bill at its core. And I love that we have that guy as a role model for our kids. Guys, I could sit here all night and do this, but we got to get the hell out of here. I'm Drew Gear. That's Chris Kruger. Thank you for everybody who showed up tonight to watch it live.